Hey everyone, this is my first video, so go easy on me. Today I'm going to show you around my Mercedes W140 S500 Business Edition. Now I know there's a few videos on here on YouTube, such as Pierre Hadery, who doesn't particularly like them, and I think I have to agree with him on a number of points actually. Or do I? Because, well, I actually own one. And there's also something a bit more entertaining, such as Effspot's V12 with a $12,000 exhaust, driving through tunnels, making some ridiculous noises. So I'll link those videos, maybe there, maybe down there, up there maybe? Come on guys, give me a break, I'm new here. So in this video I'm going to cover a quick walk around, show you some of the features, how much I actually paid for this car, how much it's cost me so far, and what's still wrong with it, and how much it's going to potentially cost me to put right. I'll probably go through common issues in a separate video. This is actually the third W140 I've been near. My dad used to have one between 2006 to 2018, so quite a while. It was a base spec S280, which I didn't particularly like, to be honest. It just had the potential for too many things to go wrong. Anyway, this is the perfect car if you were Russian mafia, a head of state, or some high-powered businessman. Now that they've depreciated enough, old Indian men, because we love a bit of depreciation. So let me show you around. This is a very late car. It was April 98, and I don't think it was actually registered until late 98, early 99, so it must have sat around at a dealer because it's on a T plate. Here we have Parktronic, both front and back. I've so far added these Amg Wheels, which actually have an original W140 part number. They are 18 by 8.5. I didn't particularly like the wheels that it came with. It actually had the original Business Edition monoblock wheels. They'd been painted black, so a bit too gangster for me. So I had to get these to replace them. And then around the back, it actually had some aftermarket lights. Again, as you can see, I've swapped them over for the originals, which are correct for this car. So if we just jump in here, you can see one of the cool features. If I press to open the boot, a little handle pops out, which saves you touching any road grime on the back of the boot. And there you have what I thought was a fairly spacious boot. But apparently, the chief engineer who was in charge of designing this car was fired because he didn't allow for enough luggage space for the car when it's fully loaded with 5 people, which I thought was quite funny actually, because I've actually had, I think, 3 Mercedes 190e doors in the back of one of these, and I had the 4th one inside the car, so I wouldn't call it small, let's just say that. Here is where the CD would go for the autopilot system, which is a pretty primitive sat nav from the late 90s. And you can see the door and the handle pops back in. Nothing much else to note out here apart from this GPS aerial, which is for that system. Unfortunately, the car didn't come with the original autopilot head unit, but I've replaced it with something else, which I'll show you guys. So this car is actually the extended wheelbase version, being a business edition. It's 10 centimeters longer than the standard version, and it was actually designed this way to begin with, and then later shortened just before it was launched. And just to give you a perspective on size, you could, in theory, if the panels were thin enough, if you were to fit a BMW F80 3 Series inside, you'd have 50 centimeters to spare in length and 60 centimeters to spare in height, which is just absolutely crazy. But it gives you a bit of perspective on how big this car is, and it's not lightweight at all, as you can probably tell. I think it weighs the best part of 2.2 tons. Okay, let's jump inside. Oh, before we do, just show you these double glazed windows. As you can see, they are actually a fair few millimeters thick, unlike the ones on the next generation, which literally 2 panes of glass stuck together really. As you can imagine, these cut out a whole load of road noise, which helps keep the cabin nice and quiet. And the other thing, soft close. I believe one of the first cars to have it, pretty commonplace now with newer luxury cars, but this had it all the way from, I think, 92, 93. One of the first to do it. Don't have to slam the door on these. Okay, let's jump inside. So here you have a black leather interior, black dash with the Bellwood trim, so around the steering wheel, around the gear knob, which I think are extras. And you can see the steering wheel on the Business Edition has the stitched horn push and the different emblem to the standard ones. Okay, so in here I'm just going to show you how ridiculously light the steering wheel is on these. So I've just got my pinky, we're stood still, and I can turn it all the way around. Now remember, we're on the 8.5-inch wide wheels. Imagine what it's like with the standard steel wheels, which are a bit skinnier. But look at that, I can move it around with my pinky quite easily. Or, I mean, you could do 2 fingers, 3. So as I mentioned, in the Business Edition you get this stitched horn push with the different emblem on the steering wheel. You've got electric seats, electric steering wheel adjustment, auto dimming mirror, and I've added a microphone for hands-free up there as well. This is what I have instead of the original autopilot system. This is a Becker Cascade Pro, and it has the primitive sat-nav from the 90s. You know, if I ever do feel like getting the genuine 90s experience and getting lost somewhere. The car has the 10-speaker system, which is standard. If you wanted to upgrade that a little, you could go for the Bose system, which I think has a few more speakers. Glass sunroof, which tilts and slides as you'd expect. Down here, you know, heated seats, front and back. This is for the rear blind. Why don't more cars do this? There's a little trim piece next to the seat here to stop you losing things forever, really, and your car eating all your change and whatever else that falls out your pocket. And these are the little displays for the Parktronic system. And there's 2 more back there, just on top of the rear window. I think that's it up here, so let's jump in the back and show you around in there. Okay, as you can see in the back here, there's loads of legroom. I mean, I'm 5'4", so I don't exactly need a whole load of legroom, or I'm not lacking legroom in very many cars anyway. So, I mean, still welcome. You get this little footrest here in the Business Edition. It's an optional extra in others. There's these reading lights up here. And in the Business Edition you get this little storage unit in the center with a power socket. Not much else back here, just a heated seat button and this little vanity mirror, which is standard. Okay, let's jump on to the other side. Here I have the ability to move the front seat backwards and forwards and tilt it up or down a bit. And I also have a fold out table, which back in the 90s must have just been absolutely perfect for high-powered CEOs to do lines of coke off of while they're being chauffeured between business meetings. Or I suppose you could use it for a newspaper or a laptop. I don't know, whatever your preference is. But today we're actually going to do a practical test. I've got some flour here, and I've got my friend Henry, who I know is a bit of a cokehead. So we'll test it out. Okay, so I think Henry's ready. I think he's had a bit of a tough meeting today, really. So he really needs this. Works pretty well, as you can see. So just going to show you the engine bay here today. This is the M119 5-litre V8. It has about 320 brake horsepower, 417 newton meters of torque, and I believe it does 0 to 60 in about 7 or 7.5 seconds, something around that. Now that doesn't sound particularly quick, but when you consider the weight, which is I think the best part of 2.2 tons, it sounds quick to me back in the 90s, but I don't really know what to compare it to. Obviously this car isn't really built for 0 to 60 times. It's built for sitting on the Autobahn doing 100 miles an hour plus, which hopefully I can do one day. There you have it. I've shown you around the features and hopefully you've enjoyed it. Now we're just going to run through what this car has cost me and what I've had to do to fix it so far. So let's run through that. Okay, so I'll probably put items into 3 separate lists: service, maintenance, repairs, and then one for upgrades. And I'll probably put a list up on screen somewhere just so I can total it up. So I bought this car for 2,800. It had 87,000 miles on it when I got it. It doesn't have too much history. I think it has a few stamps early from its life, but not much else after that. So if we start with the service maintenance list, I've done a service myself. I bought the bits and those cost me 60 quid for the air filter oil and oil filter. I still have to change the cabin filter, which many people actually forget, so that's another 30 quid to come. I've bought 4 new tyres, as the ones that came with the car were close to the end of their life, and I've gone for some Dunlop Sport Max RT2s, which were actually had decent reviews on Auto Express. They were 109 a corner, so 440 quid, or best part of that. I've changed the wipers. They were 50 quid. Don't go for the aero ones. They just don't seem to work for this car. My friend has actually tried them as well, and he's had no luck with them. Other than that, I haven't really done anything maintenance-wise, but I do have a few things still on the list. One of them being changing the diff oil, which will probably be 60 quid if I gave it to someone to change. Gearbox oil, that's probably another 250 quid if I gave it to someone again. Coolant, I'd probably change myself, that'd be another 20 quid. Steering fluid, that's, about a fiver, and then another 5 quid for the filter again, which people often forget in the bottom of the reservoir where you fill it up. The wiper motor actually needs opening and greasing, so that one's actually free. It'll just take me an hour or two to probably do. The sunroof needs greasing, just to make sure it keeps operating smoothly. Again, that's probably free, just take me a bit of time to take it apart a bit. I have to do the tracking, which is another 45 quid. And I'd probably do the brake discs and pads. So the rears are 100 quid for both discs and pads, and the fronts are about 150. So 250 in total, and a couple of hours of light labour, hopefully. So that total actually comes up to 1,154. Okay, so on to repairs. The fuel pump was actually leaking when I got the car, so I got that changed. I bought the fuel pump for 100 quid. A couple of the rear brake lines were rusty, so I've had those replaced as well, and that was 130 quid, and my mechanic actually did those, the fuel pump and the brake lines at the same time. Now there's still a list of things that are not quite right. I have some nice and creaky suspension on the rear, which is just because the springs are old and tired. These are £200 from Mercedes, and it might be about £100 of labour, I would have thought, if I had to guess. Another big one, the steering box is leaking, so that is going to cost me 500 quid at least to put right, which is not fun. And I've also bought some new accumulators for the rear suspension, which is hydraulic, and they're usually the first component to fail in that suspension system, so I thought I'd do those as a preventative bit of maintenance, and they're actually 117 for both of them. The oil cooler at the front had a very tiny leak. It seems to have almost gone away after driving it a bit, but I bought one anyway. That was another 107. Much further down on my list, I have one of the rear heated seat switches not working, so I need to investigate that. So that comes up to a total of 1,254. I think I figured out what I can use this table for. It's perfect for me to lean on and cry about how much it's going to cost me to fix this car. Okay, and we're still not done because there's a load of little cosmetic bits I've had to fix. So the gear surround was actually a bit trash. It had like a plasticky, non-fitting surround which had some fake wood trim sticker on it, which just looked really bad. But I've managed to find one for 25 quid and I've already installed that. The rear lights were actually aftermarket originally, but I managed to find some original ones, so that was another 70 quid. They're not, perfect, but they'll do for now. They were used, and I think once maybe they start to annoy me enough, I might fork out the 200 plus quid to get new ones. The other little annoyances are like the boot doesn't pop up automatically because the springs are weakened over time. There's a few little spots of rust starting to creep in a number of places, so I'm trying to catch that early. But if I don't, that means paintwork, which, for a pair of front wings, you'd be looking at around 500 quid maybe. So that list hasn't actually cost me too much yet anyway. That's only 95 quid. Okay, on to the final list, which is upgrades. I really couldn't live with the wheels that the car came with. They'd been painted black. They were original to the car because they were the Business Edition monoblocks, but they were just too gangster for me. I'll stick a picture of them up here. I actually went out and bought these Amg wheels, which have the correct 140 part number on them. They're the 18-inch version by 8.5-inch wide, and they were 450 quid, and they'd actually been freshly powder coated. Another upgrade was the Oris tow hook, which I actually got for free from our old W140. It was a optional extra, and it's perfectly hidden behind the bumper. I actually won't be towing anything heavy. I just needed it for my go-kart. Other things, I'd love an S600 stitched dash. It would also fix one of the cosmetic issues where someone has tried to pry open the glove box and left a load of marks on the dashboard. This is actually the second W140 I've seen it on. Surprising, really. I don't know why people do that. Anyway, the other thing is some nice rear blinds to match the rear, a rear split bench, fridge potentially, but these are all maybes because any one of these items will add up to, big money, which, to be honest, looking at my list of things to fix, I think I have other priorities. The one thing I will probably do soon is maybe just space out the rear wheels a bit. So at the moment, this list probably only comes to the 100 quid or so for a pair of spacers. So if we add all that up, that's a total of 2,603 and 68 pence. And there's still so many things to go wrong. There you have it. Hopefully I've covered things in a bit more detail and you found this video interesting. These cars really aren't for the faint-hearted. Parts can be expensive. A few of the jobs can be labor intensive, so you can quite quickly spend a lot on one of these, especially with all of the electronics, which are bound to fail at some point. Personally though, I can't think of a better car for the money. The W220 generation after this just feels cheap in comparison, and the W126 prior to this, as nice as they are, a W140 is even smoother and quieter. Like, share and subscribe. That's what YouTubers are supposed to say, right? Actually, please do, as it lets me know if this is any good, and I'll try to keep you guys updated on what it's like to own a W140, and maybe do some videos on some of my other cars. I also have a 1995 SL500, a 1990 2.5 16 valve 190E, and a 1972 280 SE, all with their own list of issues, which I'm sure you'll enjoy me running through. I probably won't, but I have my table in here, so I can have a quiet moment with that. You know what they say, there's no such thing as a cheap Mercedes.